In the quiet corners of my childhood home, the air was thick with expectations. My parents, both high achievers, had crafted a life that sparkled with the sheen of perfection. Every family photo was a testament to their meticulous planning. Smiles frozen in time, each frame a carefully curated moment. I often found myself standing in the shadow of my sister Clara, the golden child, whose achievements were celebrated like national holidays. Clara was everything our parents wanted: smart, beautiful, and poised. I, on the other hand, was the wild card. I was the artist, the dreamer, the one who dared to color outside the lines. As children, we shared a bond that felt unbreakable, a sisterhood forged in laughter and whispered secrets. But as we grew, the weight of our parents' expectations began to warp that bond. I remember the day Clara received her acceptance letter to an Ivy League school. The house erupted in cheers, and I stood in the background, clapping half-heartedly, my heart heavy with a mix of pride and envy. It was a moment that crystallized our roles. Clara, the perfect daughter, and me, the one who could never quite measure up. As I navigated my teenage years, I felt the pressure to conform, to fit into the mold my parents had created. I tried to excel in academics, to join clubs, to be the daughter they wanted. But with every attempt, I felt more like a ghost in my own life. The more I tried to please them, the more I lost myself. The rift between Clara and me began to widen, not with malice, but with the silent understanding that we were both trapped in a game we didn't choose. I watched as she effortlessly donned the mantle of perfection, while I struggled to find my place. Our conversations became strained, filled with unspoken words and hidden resentments. The day I met Alex changed everything. He was everything I wasn't. Spontaneous, free-spirited, and unafraid to challenge the status quo. With him, I felt alive, and for the first time, I dared to dream of a life beyond my parents' expectations. But that dream came with a price. As I fell in love and made the decision to marry, I felt the weight of my family's disapproval looming over me. I knew that my choice would shatter the illusion of our perfect family. Clara's life was already mapped out. Graduate, marry, have children. I was stepping off the path, and I could feel the tension crackling in the air. In the days leading up to my wedding, I found myself reflecting on the years of pressure, the constant comparison, and the love that had turned into a competition. I was ready to embrace my own happiness, but the thought of my parents' reaction loomed like a dark cloud. Would they ever understand? Would they ever accept me for who I truly was? As I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my wedding dress, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but the absence of my parents felt like a gaping hole in my heart. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was finally choosing my own path, even if it meant leaving behind the perfect image they had crafted for us. The sun rose on my wedding day, casting a golden hue over the garden where I would soon say, I do. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and laughter echoed as friends and family gathered to celebrate. Yet, amidst the joy, a heavy silence loomed over me, a stark reminder of my parents' absence. As I stood in my bridal gown, I felt like a character in a play, performing for an audience that was missing its most critical members. My heart raced with anticipation, but the excitement was tinged with a profound sadness. Clara, radiant in her role as my maid of honor, smiled brightly, but I could see the flicker of concern in her eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I forced a smile, nodding as I tried to push down the swell of emotions threatening to spill over. "I'm fine, just a little nervous." But the truth was, I was terrified. Not just of the commitment I was about to make, but of the chasm that had formed between my family and me. My parents had made it clear that they disapproved of my choice to marry Alex before Clara had her chance. Their perfect plan was unraveling, and I was the one holding the scissors. As the ceremony began, I walked down the aisle, my heart pounding in my chest. Friends and family turned to watch, their faces a blur of smiles and tears. But all I could think about was the empty seats where my parents should have been. I searched the crowd for a familiar face, hoping to catch a glimpse of their support, But the reality of their absence hit me like a wave. Alex stood at the altar, his eyes filled with love and understanding. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. He was my anchor, the one who had encouraged me to break free from the chains of expectation. As I reached him, I took a deep breath, ready to embrace the future we had envisioned together. The vows we exchanged were filled with promises of love, support, and understanding. I poured my heart into every word, hoping that somehow my parents could feel the sincerity of my commitment. But as I looked out into the crowd, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. After the ceremony, the reception was a whirlwind of laughter, dancing, and celebration. Yet, the absence of my parents cast a shadow over the festivities. Clara tried to lighten the mood, but I could see the worry etched on her face. "Let's make a toast," she announced, raising her glass. "To love, family, and new beginnings." Everyone cheered, but I felt a lump in my throat. I raised my glass, forcing a smile, but inside I was grappling with the reality that my family was fractured. The perfect image we had once portrayed was now a distant memory, replaced by the painful truth of our disconnection. As the night wore on, I danced with Alex, lost in the moment, but my heart ached for the family I had left behind. I had chosen my path, but at what cost? The weight of my decision settled heavily on my shoulders, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had betrayed the very people who had shaped my life. In the midst of the celebration, I caught a glimpse of Clara, her smile faltering as she watched me. I realized then that we were both trapped in a cycle of expectations, each struggling to find our own identities in a world that demanded perfection. As the night came to a close, I felt a mix of joy and sorrow. I had married the love of my life, but the absence of my parents loomed large, a reminder of the rift that had formed between us. I knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I was determined to forge my own path, even if it meant navigating the complexities of family dynamics alone. The days following my wedding were a blur of happiness and heartache. I had married Alex, the love of my life, but the absence of my parents weighed heavily on my heart. I found myself replaying the events of the wedding, searching for answers to the that me. Why had they chosen to skip such a significant moment in life? As I settled into married, I began to unravel the threads of family's history, seeking to understand the secrets that had led to estrangement. I reached out to Clara, hoping to bridge the gap that had formed us. One evening, as we sat in my living room, I could sense the tension in the air. Clara's facade was beginning to crack, and I see the exhaustion etched on her face. "I don't understand why they didn't come," she said, her voice. "You deserve to have them there." "I know," I replied, my heart aching for the sister I had once been so close to. "But I think it's more than just my wedding. There's something deeper going on with our family." Clara looked away, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her dress. "You don't know the half of it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Mom and Dad have always had this idea of what a perfect family looks like. And when you chose to marry Alex before me, it shattered that image." I felt a pang of guilt. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted to be happy. Clara sighed, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You think I don't want to be happy? I've spent my whole life trying to meet their expectations. I'm tired and I'm scared. What if I can't live up to what they want?" Her words struck a chord deep within me. I had always seen Clara as the perfect daughter, but now I realized she was just as trapped as I was. "What do you mean?" I asked, leaning closer. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I've been struggling with my own choices. I'm not sure I want the life they've planned for me. I feel like I'm living a lie, and I don't know how to break free." The revelation hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. "You don't have to do this alone, Clara. We can figure this out together." As we talked late into the night, secrets began to unravel. Clara shared her fears about her future, her doubts about her relationship with her perfect boyfriend, and the pressure she felt to conform. I opened up about my own struggles, the weight of our parents' expectations, and the guilt I felt for choosing my own happiness over the family's image. In that moment, we found solace in our shared experiences. The bond that had once felt strained began to mend, and I realized that we were both victims of the same expectations. We were two sisters, each trying to navigate a world that demanded perfection, and in our vulnerability, we found strength. But as the conversation deepened, I couldn't shake the feeling that there were still secrets lurking beneath the surface. "What about Mom and Dad?" I asked. "Why did they really skip my wedding?" Clara's expression darkened. "They were upset, but it's more than that. They've always had this idea that we should be perfect, and when you broke that mold, it threatened everything they believed in. They didn't just skip your wedding, they skipped the chance to accept you for who you are." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had always thought that my parents' absence was a reflection of their disappointment in me, but now I saw it as a failure on their part to embrace the reality of our lives. As the night wore on, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I had spent so long trying to fit into a mold that didn't belong to me, and now I was ready to break free. I wanted to confront my parents, to demand answers, and to reclaim my identity, but I also knew that I couldn't do it alone. Clara and I had to stand together, united in our quest for acceptance and understanding. We were sisters, bound by blood and shared struggles, and together we would face the challenges ahead. The following week, I found myself standing in front of my parents' house, my heart racing with a mix of anxiety and determination. Clara had agreed to come with me, and together we would confront the very people who had shaped our lives. As we walked up the familiar path, memories flooded back. Family dinners, laughter, and the warmth of a home that now felt foreign. I knocked on the door and my mother answered, her expression shifting from surprise to concern as she took in our presence. "Girls, what a surprise," she said, her voice laced with uncertainty. "Is everything okay?" I could feel Clara's hand trembling beside me, and I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. We stepped inside, and the atmosphere felt charged with unspoken words. My father joined us, his brow furrowed as he sensed the tension. "What's going on?" he asked, his tone cautious. I glanced at Clara, who nodded, encouraging me to speak. "We want to know why you skipped my wedding," I said, my voice rising with emotion. "Why didn't you support me on one of the most important days of my life?" My mother's expression hardened, and I could see the walls she had built around herself. "We were disappointed, that's all. You married before Clara, and it shattered our vision of a perfect family." "Perfect family?" I echoed, incredulous. "What does that even mean? You've always pushed us to be something we're not. Clara and I are not your puppets." My father stepped forward, his voice low and firm. "We just wanted what was best for you both. We thought you would understand." "Understand what?" Clara interjected, her voice rising. "That we should live our lives according to your expectations? I'm tired of pretending to be someone I'm not." The confrontation escalated, emotions boiling over as years of pent-up frustration spilled out. My parents tried to defend their actions, but their words felt hollow, a feeble attempt to justify their absence. As the argument reached its peak, I felt a wave of clarity wash over me. This isn't just about my wedding. It's about the years of pressure, the constant comparison, and the love that has turned into a competition. We're not perfect, and we never will be. But we deserve to be accepted for who we are. Silence fell over the room, the weight of my words hanging in the air. My parents exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from defensiveness to something resembling understanding. "I never to hurt you," my mother finally said, her voice trembling. "I just wanted you both to have the best." "But your best isn't our best," I replied, my heart aching. "We need you to accept us, flaws and all. We're not perfect, and we don't want to be." As the conversation continued, I could see the cracks in my parents' facade beginning to. They were human, flawed and imperfect, just like us. And in that moment, I realized that reconciliation was possible, but it would take time and effort from all of us. We left that day with a sense hope, knowing that the road ahead would be challenging, but we were ready to face together. The confrontation had opened the door to healing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of possibility. In the weeks that followed I found myself in a state of the emotional upheaval of confronting my parents had left me both exhausted and invigorated. I had finally spoken my truth, but the journey toward healing was just beginning. As I sat in my living room, the sunlight streaming through the window, I couldn't help replay the events of the past few months in my mind. My wedding day, the absence of my parents, the confrontation, it all felt like a whirlwind of emotions that had turned my life upside down. I glanced at the wedding photos displayed on the wall, each image a reminder of the love Alex and I had shared. But alongside those memories were the shadows of family's disapproval, the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I had chosen my own path, but at what cost? I picked up my phone, scrolling through messages from Clara. She had been a constant source of support, and I was grateful for presence in my life. But I also a pang of guilt for the burden I had placed on her shoulders. She had her own struggles, and I didn't want to drag her down with my issues. As I reflected on my choices, I realized that I had been so focused on breaking free from my parents' expectations that I had neglected to consider my actions on those I loved. I had hurt my family, and while I had fought for my own happiness, I couldn't ignore the pain I had caused. I decided to reach out to my parents, to extend an olive branch and begin the process of healing. I wanted to show them that I was to work toward understanding, even if it meant facing my own regrets. "Can we meet?" I texted my mother, my heart racing as I hit send. I knew it would take time to rebuild our relationship, but I was ready to take that first step. A few hours later, my mother replied, her message filled with uncertainty, but also a hint of hope. "Yes, let's talk. I think we need to." For our meeting, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. I wanted to express my love for them, to show them that was still their daughter, even if I had chosen a different path. I wanted to bridge the gap that had formed between us and begin the process of healing. When the day arrived, I found myself standing in front of parents' house once again, my heart pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was a step toward. As I entered their home, I was greeted by the familiar scent of my mother's cooking, a reminder of the warmth and love that had once filled our family. But the atmosphere felt different now, charged with unspoken words and lingering tension. We sat down, and I could see the apprehension in their eyes. "I'm sorry for how things have been," I began, my voice steady. "I love you both, and I want to work toward understanding." My mother's eyes glistened with tears, and my father nodded, his expression softening. "We've made mistakes too." He admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "We never meant to push you away." As we talked, I felt the walls between us begin to crumble. We shared our fears, our regrets, and our hopes for the future. It was a difficult conversation, but it was also Arctic, a necessary step toward healing. And that moment, I realized that perfection was an illusion. We were all flawed, navigating the complexities of life together. And while the road ahead would be challenging, I felt a renewed sense of hope. We were taking the first steps toward rebuilding our family, one conversation at a time. As the weeks turned into months, I watched Clara's perfect image begin to crumble. The facade had maintained for so long was starting to show cracks, and I could see the toll it was taking on her. It began with signs: a missed family gathering, a late phone call that ended in tears. I could sense her struggle, the weight of expectations pressing down on her shoulders. She was trying live up to the ideal our parents had set, but the pressure was becoming unbearable. One evening, I invited Clara over for dinner, hoping to create a safe space for her to open up. As we sat at the table, I could see the exhaustion etched on her face. "You okay?" I asked, concern lacing my voice. She sighed, pushing her food around on her plate. "I don't know, Jess. I feel like I'm drowning. I'm supposed to be perfect, but I can't keep up with it anymore." My heart ached for her. "You don't have to be perfect, Clara. You're allowed to be yourself." "I know," she replied, her voice trembling. "But what if being myself isn't enough? What if I disappoint Mom and Dad?" The fear in her eyes mirrored my own struggles, and I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. You won't disappoint them by being true to yourself. You deserve to live a life that makes you happy, not one that fits their mold. As we talked, Clara began to share her own doubts and fears. She revealed that her relationship with her boyfriend was faltering, that she felt trapped in a life that didn't reflect who she truly was. The pressure to maintain the perfect image had become suffocating, and she was ready to break free. I don't want to be the perfect daughter anymore, she confessed, tears streaming down her cheeks. I just want to be me. In that moment, I saw the strength in her vulnerability. Clara was no longer the golden child. She was a woman grappling with her identity, just like me. We were both navigating the complexities of family expectations, and together, we could find a way to embrace our true selves. As the weeks passed, Clara and I leaned on each other for support. We began to explore our passions, encouraging one another to pursue our dreams without the weight of our parents' expectations. I felt a surge of pride for my sister. I love that idea. Let's do it. As we began to plan the show, I reached out to our parents, inviting them to attend. I wanted them to see the women we had become, to witness the beauty of our journey toward authenticity. When the day of the gallery show arrived, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. Clara and I had worked tirelessly to prepare, and now it was time to share our art with the world. As we set up the gallery, I could see the pride in Clara's eyes, and I felt a sense of accomplishment wash over me. As the guests began to arrive, I spotted my parents in the crowd. They looked nervous but determined, and I could see the love in their eyes as they took in our work. I felt a wave of gratitude for the journey we had taken together, and I knew that this was a pivotal moment for our family. As the night unfolded, I watched as our parents engaged with our art, asking questions and expressing their admiration. It was a beautiful reminder of how far we had come, and I felt a sense of hope for the future. At the end of the night, as the guests began to leave, my parents approached us, their expressions filled with pride. "We're so proud of you both," my mother said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You've created something beautiful." In that moment, I realized that perfection was an illusion. We were all flawed, navigating the complexities of life together. And while the road ahead would be challenging, I felt a renewed sense of hope. We were taking the first steps toward rebuilding our family, one conversation at a time. As I looked at Clara, I knew that we were no longer bound by the chains of perfection. We were two sisters, united in our quest for authenticity, ready to embrace the messy, beautiful reality of our lives. And as we stood together, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We were finally free to be ourselves, and that was the greatest gift of all.